15 Disturbing Facts You Didn't Know About Charles Manson, Part 1.
If you are brand new to our channel, we invite you to take a moment to subscribe. Just click on the lit red button as well as the gray bell. Why the bell? Well, it will let you know every time we post a new video.
1. Been in jail for over 80% of his life. Long before Charles Manson urged his followers to commit violent mass murder for him, he had already spent the majority of his life behind some kind of bars. Since the age of 12 he had been in and out of reform school and prison. By the time he was 32 years old, he had already spent a cumulative 16 years behind bars, most of his free years taking place before puberty. Many have claimed that Manson had always felt more comfortable behind bars, where he knew how to get his way, and how the power structure worked. It's here that the fruit of his philosophies emerged, but also where he learned to read and play guitar. As of 2016 he has been in prison for his involvement in the Tate murders for nearly 45 consecutive years. 2. Was inspired by Scientology. Charles Manson's ideology was pasted together from a bunch of different sources, but everyone agrees that Scientology played a pretty big part in the evolution of his cult of manipulation. While in prison for another crime, Manson became a Scientologist. While much has been overplayed in his exact involvement with the cultish religion, he was very taken by the belief system, but also very frustrated by its pyramid structure that required monetary investment to rise up the ranks. Manson's biggest takeaways from his time as a Scientologist, which were admittedly short-lived, were the tools of persuasion and manipulation used to keep people under control, and to hold check over your destiny. Unsurprisingly, during this era of his life he was also very taken by the all-time bestseller, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It becomes pretty clear that Manson was never all that interested in anything spiritual, but was always searching for how he could have the upper hand on just about anyone. 3. Tate was 8 months pregnant when murdered. Actress Sharon Tate was not a huge star when she was murdered by the Manson family. She had been acting for a year, and was unnaturally beautiful, gaining attention and building small momentum along the way. Her most notable roles were as the romantic lead in her husband, Roman Polanski's film, Fearless Vampire Killers, and The Pulpy Valley of the Dolls. At the time of the murders she was 8 months pregnant with her first child with Polanski, only adding more weight to the awful tragedy. Without going too much into details about exactly what went on, she apparently begged for the life of her unborn child before being stabbed to death. Polanski, who was in the UK at the time, was supposed to arrive earlier to meet with his wife, but had postponed his plans. 4. Tried to frame Black Panthers with murder. One thing that often gets swept under the rug about the Charles Manson murders is that race played a huge role in his vision. Manson was an ardent racist and his entire worldview was shaped around the civil rights movement, as he believed African Americans were going to stage a coup and take over society. In this scenario, he believed that black people were still genetically inferior and he would be welcomed as their leader once they realized they were in over their head. To speed up this outcome, Manson tried to convince his followers to make their murders look as though they were committed by the Black Panthers, with references to pigs that served an homage to the Beatles, and a call to what the Panthers called the establishment. Manson hoped that these murders would be blamed on the Black Panther group. For him, Helter Skelter was what this new revolution was to be called. 5. Used substances to control teen followers. According to Helter Skelter, the book written about the case by prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi, drugs played a smaller role in the Manson murders than many assume. While a lot of smoke was being smoked and acid being dropped, the murders themselves were committed stone cold sober. If anything, according to Bugliosi, sex played a much larger role in the persuasion techniques of Manson. He treated sex as a tool of manipulation, and as often as he would deflower virginal teens, he made sure to always have handsome men in his entourage to keep them under control. While it's easy to look at all the craziness and wonder how anyone would ever follow a crazed madman like Charlie, it's important to note that most of his followers joined the family before the age of 20. Most were from broken homes and were easily manipulated by the much older Charles Manson. 6. His followers attempted to murder a key witness. Not all of Manson's followers were imprisoned in the aftermath of the two major murder sprees. To be fair, not all were directly involved. While this might have been a good opportunity to distance themselves from the events, they actually doubled down. Whether this is because Charles Manson really did have that kind of thrall, that they were young and stupid, or that they were enjoying the brief glow of fame, it's hard to say, but they found a way to get themselves into deeper trouble. One of the key witnesses in the state's case against Manson and the family was Barbara Hoyt. She had been one of Manson's followers, but had not been directly involved in any of the murders that took place. She did report to police upon her arrest that the others had claimed to be responsible for the Tate LeBianca murders and the aftermath. Unsure if she really wanted to speak against the family, she was bribed by them to take a trip to Hawaii, all expenses paid, in order to not testify. This was a bit of a gamble, though, so just to be safe they fed her a burger with 10 doses of LSD in the hopes it would kill her, or she'd get herself killed. It didn't work out, though, and only made her more eager to testify against the family. 7. The failed musician targeted a producer. As we've already established, Charles Manson's big dream was to become a rock star. While that eventually twisted into the fact that his music career was meant to be a way to communicate to the world that he was the next Jesus, that dream started on more humble terms. After arriving in Hollywood, thanks to his friend Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, Manson had the opportunity to play for some record producers. His best shot was with record producer Terry Melcher, who met with Manson on a number of occasions. Melcher was actress Doris Day's son, and had worked with the Byrds, Pat Boone, Dennis Wilson and the Mamas and the Papas. Manson had once met with Melcher at a house on Cielo Drive, which was eventually rented by the Polanskis. While Manson had claimed he had chosen a house at random for his spree, it seems more than a coincidence that he targeted a house he believed Terry Melcher had been living in. 8. Mother sold him for a pitcher of beer. Most serial killers have less than ideal upbringings, and Manson is no different. Born to a 15-year-old teenager, for the first few months of his life Charles Manson didn't even have a proper name. Growing up in a broken home with a family who never really seemed to want him, Manson did not get a whole lot of love growing up. According to a number of reports, as a baby, his mother had actually sold Charlie to a waitress at a bar. In exchange for a pitcher of beer, the childless waitress could raise the infant Charlie and get him off his mother's hands. Charlie's uncle interfered, though, and went to retrieve the child. It makes you wonder if things would have been different if Charles Manson had actually had someone who wanted him. As awful it is to buy someone's baby, part of us believes he might have been better off with her.